Hello, class. It's Miss Roberts here, and today we're going to talk about refutations and rebuttals. Now, depending on which modality this class is in, some of us might be in hybrid, so we will have a chance to address each other in the debate synchronously. Some of us might be in an online synchronous class, so where we'll be doing the same thing but on Zoom. And some of us will be in asynchronous courses, so we'll be primarily anticipating the opposing arguments. All right. So we're just going to go ahead and go over the slides. And of course, if you have any questions at all, please let me know. Let's begin. Move us over here. All right. Go move stuff over here some more. Okay. All right. This is gonna be awesome. All right, so when we are talking about refutation and rebuttals, we are trying to figure out how to respond and oppose someone's argument while rebuilding and reinforcing our own argument. So with refutation is denial of another's argument, which requires a clash. So when we are thinking about our debates, we have opposing sides, affirmative and negative. And we're always thinking about not only our own argument, but what would the opposing viewpoint say in response to that argument. For the policy speech, I told you for one whole section to research the opposing argument and respond. So I did that in preparation for this assignment. Now, advocacy is distinct from reputation because we're advocating for our own point of view and we're talking about our own point of view, but we're not necessarily focused on the opponent's arguments. All right. So I mentioned this before in one of my videos. When we think about social media, it reflects a broader sense of argumentation versus more polished traditional media. You might see maybe on like CNN or MSNBC, or maybe if you have regular TV, you might see a panel of speakers who talk about their opinion and it's very polished in that way. There's a moderator, but in social media, we don't have such things. Maybe the algorithm and the filters as that moderator force, but not necessarily. So when we think about the filter bubble, people might coexist if they don't interact as much. So it's possible to look at content and only get one point of view. But the outside world, outside social media, is way more nuanced and shades of gray than that. So you might, because the way algorithms work, you're able to, because you click on and like information, you get fed that information over and over again. So you don't have access to the opposing point of view. Excuse me, you don't have access to the opposing point of view unless you seek it out. So you want to make sure to seek out, even if you don't agree with the opposing point of view, at least you know what it is and have an understanding of why someone might think that way. All right, so we have fact versus opinion. So fact is something that's verifiably true. We incorporate these facts and stats in our speeches. Then opinion is a judgment or a belief. So we want to make sure to have the distinction between each. It's okay to have an opinion, and we want our opinions to be based on facts. And we want to create well-reasoned judgments, the use of facts and data to shape belief. So that's the ultimate goal. All right. So how do we know fact from opinion? With AI making videos so crystal clear now that we can't necessarily not understand, but we have to double check and see, oh, is this real? I did that with a video the other day. I'm like, wait a minute, there's a glitch. Is this AI? Verse and also people creating content that sounds delivery wise sounds true and sounds believable, right? So we talked about earlier in the semester about public speaking as debate or the role of delivery and believe that excuse me the role that delivery plays in our believability of facts and stats and just have to be like, okay, the delivery is shiny, but what are they actually saying? So we can determine those facts from opinions. Is it testable? So can it be determined to be correct? Whose perspective is it from? So is the claim all the same in all instances? What is the orientation of the claim? So how does the claim interact with objective reality? Does it state or interpret reality? Meaning, how is the claim perceived by an outside source? And to the degree of conclusion. So is it 100%, 50%, probably most, all? Okay, so just a little bit of throwback from the Tolman model. Creating an effective response. So when we're thinking of answering to someone if they're like right in front of you during an actual debate on Zoom when we're asynchronous, when we're synchronous online, so we're all together in one Zoom room, or if we're asynchronous and we're not necessarily debating with the person right then and there, but we're anticipating the response. How do we create said response? So you want to make sure to listen for understanding. This can also be a part of your research, especially for our asynchronous students, where we are listening and trying to understand and interpret the opposing viewpoint, finding and using evidence, supporting your position, balancing those opinions and facts, and making sure that the opinions that we do have are based in good reasons and based in facts. Creating an offense, so making an argument, making an argument that can firmly help you win your argument. Taking quality notes, so making sure that you're responding to all arguments effectively. This can be done in the pre-planning stage, excuse me, and during this presentation while someone's speaking. So for example, in the pre-planning stage, you can make a chart where you have your arguments and the opposing arguments. And if you are working in teams, you can swap notes and figure out how to do that together. So thinking about, hey, how do we respond to our arguments point by point? And then counter messaging. So not only telling them that they are wrong, but providing a new explanation for the initial information provided. So social media has this bad where they will disagree with someone, say that they're wrong, but they're wrong just because they're wrong, right? Or they're wrong because I said so. And that works on social media, but it does not work in debate or academic debate rather. So you want to make sure that, hey, this is where I disagree with you, and connect to why you disagree, and let's have facts to back you up. And that's where we have a strong counter message. Defense versus offense. So every time I see this slide, I'm like thinking of sports. I don't play sports, but it just reminds me of basketball for some reason. But since we're on sports analogies, let's think about how we can use defense versus offense in our rebuttals. So defensive arguments minimize the importance and scope of reach of the opponent's argument versus offensive arguments gives you leverage to help you win by proving the opposite side is actively wrong and backwards. So this is where shades of gray come in, right? So some arguments you have to concede to, but what degree, that's up to you. And some arguments are black and white as far as like those offensive arguments. So for example, a defensive argument, your proposition does not help the economy as much as you say it does. So in that way, you're acknowledging that there might be some help. That's those defensive arguments, but to not that same degree. And then you go from there and say, hey, why it doesn't help as much. But the offensive argument would be your proposition actually costs the economy money and hurts it, meaning that, hey, this is straight up wrong. This hurts the economy and this is how it is. Boom, boom, boom. So you see those slight differences. With the defense, you're kind of conceding a little bit like, yeah, it can help the economy, but not nearly as much as you say it does. Versus the offensive, it actually hurts and hurts your cause, hurts the economy. All right. All right, finally, we have the declarative refutation model. I love a straightforward model that can help me do what I need to do. So I love 4 steps. Let's go ahead and talk about it. The 4 steps of a declarative refutation model is to identify the specific argument that you're refuting. So this is where your note taking comes in. If you are working in teams, you can figure out and swap notes and think about, hey, what are these specific arguments? Anticipate the pre-planning, and then once that's being said, go ahead and specify the arguments that your opponent is making. If you're in the asynchronous classes, we're trying to imagine, hey, what can be some of the arguments that they might possibly say? State and label your responses. So matching a point with a response. Support that refutation using logic and reasoning. So not just necessarily just facts, but putting those things together. Think about the tone model. That's one of my favorite models for this class because it's pretty straightforward. Claim, reasoning, warrant, backing, modality. You can put it into little pieces. So if you want to use that same model to map out the declarative refutation model, you can as well. But think about how you're going to use logic and reasoning, how you're going to put it together, but make sure to avoid those fallacies. And then show the effect of your refutation. Why does it matter that you're right? So this is the tricky part because when we're thinking about debate and advocacy, right, that's where that advocacy comes in. What is the point? What is the outcome? Who is affected by you being right? So we talked about in the previous example about the economy. The economy affects all of us. So if the policy is not going to work as effectively as the opponents say it will, then that has an impact. And if the policy straight up hurts the economy, then that will have an even bigger impact. So overall, you have your argument, label and state your responses. So matching response to response. Use logic and reasoning. Use just facts and facts and put it all together. Avoid those fallacies we were talking about. And show the effect of your refutation. The so what? Why doesn't mean that you're right. Okay? And if you're arguing online, you want to be specific, be thorough, be respectful and honest. This is just a bonus slide for if you decide to engage in argumentation online. I shrug my shoulders because sometimes sometimes it might be worth it, but you just want to make sure to keep those ethics in play and just make sure just to be careful with your mental health as far as arguing with people online. But if you decide to put your hat in the ring and state your opinion, be specific, be thorough, be respectful, and be honest. Okay? All right, so that is our quick video about refutations and rebuttals. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I look forward to hearing your speeches no matter what modality. All right, thank you so much. Bye.